Planning Committee. My name is John Walsh. I'm Chairman of the Committee for this municipal year. I'm supported on the top table today by Councillor Brady, who is Vice Chair, and to her right, Nicola Raby from the Council's Legal Department. To my left, Matthew Kay, the Head of Planning, and finally on the top table, Vicky Ridge, who is responsible for the running of this meeting. Planning officers are seated on the table behind me to my right, and they will be presenting reports in due course. The procedure for the meeting is clear, and I will detail it as we go through. We start with the business of the meeting on the agenda, and then when we come to planning applications themselves at item 5, I will outline the process for determining each application before us. So item 1 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Can I, on behalf of Conservative members, declare that the applicant for the final application, 80 Somerton Road, is known to all of us as a member of the Planning Committee, but he will be leaving for that meeting. Can I also declare from my perspective, 2 of the objectors to the application at Grisdale Close have made themselves known to me. I have not taken representations from them, but I'm aware of their views. Other declarations. Councillor Hayes, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, Grisdale Close application. I've had meetings with both the applicant and objectors, but I believe I've not expressed a firm opinion either way, and I believe I've not compromised the ability to make a judgment based on all the evidence, including that presented today.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Rimmer.
I've received a number of representations regarding the Grisdale Close development in my duties for Chris Green MP. I haven't declared a view either way and will be considering the application on its merits.
Thank you very much. Item 2, urgent business. None has been brought to my attention. We come there to item 3, apologies for absence. Mrs Ridge, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillor Radcliffe and Councillor Rimmer is deputising.
Thank you very much. Item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. These have been circulated. Members content they're a true record? No dissent. Those are approved. Thank you. We come then to item 5, planning applications and the report of the Director of Place. For each application, officers will present the report circulated to members, including information received in a supplementary report which came out with up-to-date information, objections and details from applicants. That was circulated earlier today. Following the presentation from officers, I will invite a ward councillor who is not on the committee who wishes to speak. I don't think we have one this afternoon as it happens. They would speak for up to 5 minutes. Following that, I will invite a representative of the objectors to speak for up to 3 minutes. They will be asked to take any questions from members of the committee at the end of that presentation. I will thirdly call upon a spokesman representative of the applicant to speak again for 3 minutes and to take any questions which may arise from members. Members then will have the opportunity to clarify with officers any points which need that clarification, following which the matter will be open for debate. And I will, as a general practice, seek to call a ward councillor to open that debate. Following the debate, vote will be taken, a name vote, and we will declare the result at that point. So the first item we're going to deal with today is application 1044/20, land at Grisdale Close. Mrs Williams, I believe you're presenting this one.
Thank you, Chair. The application site comprises Somerville Bungalow and its extensive landscaped area, a triangular piece of former council-owned land to the south, and 11 Grisdale Close. 11 Grisdale Close is proposed to be demolished to accommodate the proposed vehicular access into the development. The site, although mainly greenfield, is not protected from developments within the council's development plan and is considered to be in a sustainable urban location. The Council has received 82 objections, a petition of objection containing 647 signatures, and an objection from Chris Green MP, as well as 3 letters of support. The concerns raised are summarised at pages 20 to 22 of the Officer's report. Additional concerns raised following the publication of the Officer's report are addressed within the schedule of supplementary information. The majority of the objections received raised concerns about the siting, height, scale and appearance of the proposed 4-storey apartment building, the loss of trees from the site, the impacts on neighbouring residential amenity and highways impacts. The impact of the proposed development and the character and appearance of the area is considered by officers within paragraphs 32 to 47 of the Officer's report. With regards to the apartment building, it is acknowledged that there are no other examples of building in the neighbouring area that are more than 2 storeys in height. However, given the combination of the neighbouring ground level differences, the building's proposed siting and orientation, the proposed interface distances between neighbouring properties and the building, and the proposed landscape screening, it's not considered that the development would be to the detriment of the area. With regards to the development's relationship with the neighbouring bungalows on Grisdale Close, the proposed apartment building would be between 47 and 59 metres away. Furthermore, the row of proposed 2-storey houses in between the apartment building and the bungalows would lessen any visual contrast. The woodland within the western part of the site and along the northern boundary is protected by a tree preservation order. The other trees within the site are not afforded any protection. 3 protected trees along the periphery of the woodlands to the west are proposed to be felled to accommodate the development. The other trees to be lost are not protected, and the majority of these are within the centre of the site, where the apartment building, internal road and southern portion of houses are proposed. The applicant has amended their proposal several times through the life of this application to accommodate as many retained trees as they can and to introduce further replacement landscape planting. Despite the proposed loss of trees within the centre of the site, the development would result in a 25% biodiversity net gain in habitat units, mainly achieved through the proposed enhancement and management of the protected woodland to the west. However, to counteract this, the submitted biodiversity metric indicates that there would be a 22% net loss in hedgerows. However, following the submission of the metric, the applicant has further amended their proposals by introducing a long line of hedgerow to the rear of the apartment building. The metric has not been updated to reflect this, but in any case, the proposed development would result in a biodiversity net gain of at least 3%, which is compliant with current planning policy. The Council's tree officers have recommended that the trees that are to be retained within the development that are not already protected are protected by way of a new tree preservation order. With regards to the proposed interface distances between the proposed development and neighbouring houses, these all exceed the Council's minimum recommendations, as detailed within paragraphs 70 to 75 of the Officer's report. Members are advised that the proposed apartments, however, fall short of the nationally described space standards. However, these floor measurements, which were given by the applicant, have not included the proposed 4-metre square balconies and patio areas, and officers considered that weight should also be given to the access future residents would have to the proposed sizeable communal garden. In terms of highways impact, the proposed development would be accessed off Grisdale Close via Bleasdale Road and Newchurch Road, which are all residential streets. The Council's highways engineers have advised that, based on the submitted transport information, the level of traffic impact on these roads should be accommodated with little additional detriment to road safety or the operational capacity of the surrounding highway network. Engineers are also satisfied that the proposed access meets the required visibility standards, and they have raised no objection to the level of parking proposed within the development. Officers do not consider there to be sufficient planning harm associated with the development that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of delivering 43 affordable units on this site. Members are therefore recommended to approve this application subject to the suggested conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could I call an objector, Paul Meredith? I'd like to come forward, Mr. Meredith, to the middle bench there. When you've settled, you will have 3 minutes to address committee, and then, as I indicated, take any questions. I will advise you when you come to the end of your 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul. I live on Grisdale Close, and I'm addressing you on behalf of concerned local residents. As you'll be aware, the application is to put high-density housing and an enormous multi-storey block of flats in a small green space which is currently surrounded by low-rise bungalows and houses. There are many issues arising from the proposed development. It is totally out of character and scale with the surrounding areas. Due to the sheer size and scale of the proposals, it will have a severe adverse visual impact on surrounding residents and also for walkers using the public right-of-way. The height also means serious privacy concerns for residents living in adjacent properties. There will be traffic and parking issues, mature trees will be felled, many of them. Wildlife habitat and the existing wildlife corridor between Mossbank Park, Doffcocker Lodge and the moors will be destroyed. However, by far the most notable and disruptive aspect of the proposals are the impact on character, privacy and scale. At pre-application, the planning officer advised the developer against a 4-storey apartment block, and I quote, "It is not considered that a 4-storey apartment building would be in character with the area, given the low-rise nature of the surrounding residential development." The developer was also advised that major developments such as this now require at least a 10% biodiversity net gain. The developer has not shown a net gain. Indeed, their assessment actually shows a net loss in hedgerow habitat. Therefore, it does not comply with policy CG12 of the core strategy. We understand that the developments for the provision of affordable housing are needed, but it is the nature and sheer scale of this proposal which is of such concern. If Bolton Council really does care about the environment, as I believe it does, as stated in policy CG3 of your core strategy, then surely a low-rise, low-density scheme would be much more appropriate in this location. Therefore, we would request that you reject the plan to build an enormous multi-storey block of flats in the middle of existing bungalows. Affordable housing needs would be better met, for example, by a development of single or 2-storey dwellings. The Environment Act, passed only this week, requires a 10% biodiversity net gain. Does Bolton really wish to become the first council in the country to ignore this legislation?
Mr. Meredith, you've had your 3 minutes. One sentence, please, to sum up.
To ignore this legislation and support a planning application with a net loss. Please reject this application.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members? Sorry, we're trying to deal with the application as expeditiously as possible. If you could please refrain from comments or observations in the gallery, it would be helpful. Councillor Hayes, please.
Which button? Which button?
On the right. Yeah.
You come back again.
Thanks, Mr. Meredith. Can you, you said initially that the planning officers advised the applicant that they should not have a 4-storey building because it was out of character with the area. That's what I think you said. Can you tell me what evidence you have for that?
I'll get to know the way of doing this shortly. Yes, indeed. The email which I received from Helen Williams, dated the 25th of January 2021, referred to comments that she had made at pre-planning application stage. So she advised the developer, even before the plans had been drawn up in any detail, that a 4-storey block would not be in keeping with this area. Sorry.
We'll get the hang of it eventually. Only one of us is allowed to talk at once, apart from the chair can break in at any time. You made reference to the number of trees that had been felled. How many, in your view, have been felled?
We estimate, this makes you all smile anyway, that's something. We estimate around 40, possibly up to 60, were felled immediately after the land was bought from Bolton Council for £1. Now, the reason it was sold by Bolton Council for £1 was primarily due to a problem with flooding of that land. The last thing I would have expected a landowner to have bought it for £1 would be to remove trees, thus worsening the flooding. But that's the sort of number we estimate. Now, the way it's been done is we've had somebody counting the number of stumps that are still there.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson, please. Again, microphone off, please. Mr. Meredith.
Oh.
Probably one person who doesn't need one, but no. But could I just ask, you've mentioned the number of trees which were felled and the land was sold by the council. Just for clarity, for my own personal interest, could you tell me when you think the land was sold by Bolton Council?
I can't quote the exact date because I wasn't expecting to be asked that question, but I think it's late on in 2018, and the trees were then felled a couple of months later, early in 2019. Now, I hope I've got the years right on that, because my memory is going a bit hazy. Not used to all it.
Councillor Peel, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mr. Meredith. Just in terms of going back to the application and your submission to us a few minutes ago, I seem to pick up a general feeling that you weren't in particular against the principle of development of this land, but you were against the nature, size and scale. Would that be a fair assumption, that you're not against the principle of development?
Yes, I think that's fair comment. There is a very, very strong feeling that a 4-storey block of flats in this particular location with bungalows all around it just isn't in keeping with the nature and scale of the area. What's even more important, of course, and isn't evident to most people, I've only just received the dimensional details in the last couple of days, although I asked for them in April from the architect. What wasn't evident is that the land at the north side of the block of flats is actually going to be raised by a further almost 3 metres. So the effect on that is that at that side, which is where the Grisdale Close bungalows in particular are situated, the block of flats will not appear to be a 4-storey block of flats. It'll appear to be a 5-storey block of flats. And no account of this has been made in any landscape visual impact assessment. And so this, what will appear to be a 5-storey block of flats at that end, will be able to be seen from the footpaths, a very special area for visual impact. It'll be able to be seen from Mossbank Park, because I can see Mossbank Park from my bungalow, so it'll see a 5-storey block of flats there. It can be seen from the cricket club and playing fields at Heaton Cricket Club, because again I can see them from my bungalow, so they can certainly see a 5-storey block of flats, and from St Peter's Church on Mossbank on Church Road. So some very, very I can't think of the correct words to use. I'm not a professional planner or landscape architect, but these are very, very particular types of environment where landscape character visual impact assessments are important, and none of them have been taken account in any of the documentation I can see so far. In fact, I don't understand why a landscape visual assessment, impact assessment, hasn't been carried out. I think it should before this is determined.
Thank you. Microphone again, please. Councillor Peel. Sorry, I thought I would come back. Sorry. I thought I would come back with a further question.
Only to congratulate Mr Meredith as being very new to this, but by using his opportunity to answer my question in such a way.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Allen in that case.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned a couple of times in your presentation that the net biodiversity gain was 10%. I think you did. Did you not? Oh, sorry, yes, you said it should be. Okay, well, the question's still valid. You said it should be 10% as a minimum. Officers in their report say, and in their presentation, that it's 25%.
I think, Councillor Allen, it's probably better to come to officers on that point.
All right, okay. Sorry, Chair. I'll withdraw the question, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No. Thank you very much, Mr Meredith. And well done in your presentation, is all I would say. Thank you very much. We now have a supporter of the application. Forgive me, is it Kevin Marr? Thank you very much indeed. You have 3 minutes, likewise, to present to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair and members of the committee, the applicant has been working alongside the council, consultees and local community to bring forward a positive development for this brownfield site, and we welcome the officer's recommendation for approval. The scheme has evolved since its submission, taking into consideration comments received from local residents to ensure that the development is appropriate for its location. This has resulted in a decrease in the proposed number of houses and apartments. The site is positioned lower than the existing houses on Grisdale Close and Mossbank Way, as detailed in the sections provided, with the majority of the existing trees remaining. The existing footpath is also being retained in its current location and width. The proposed development takes into account the sensitive setting and has been designed to have a minimal impact on the existing trees. The layout respects the root protection zones around the existing trees and the area of existing woodland which is protected by a tree preservation order. Throughout the planning process, we have worked to address the concerns of the tree officer. Working closely with our ecology consultants, a full suite of ecology surveys were undertaken on and around the site. The scheme will deliver a biodiversity net gain in area habitats of 25%, despite the loss of a small number of trees, and includes a protection of existing priority habitats and species on site. This is significantly more than the government's current target of 10%. In terms of sustainability, the new homes will take a fabric-first approach with greater airtightness, enhanced U values for external elements, and hot water heated through an air source heat pump cylinder. This will ensure that future running costs for the occupier are kept to a minimum. There is exceptionally high demand for houses in Bolton. The council has persistently under-delivered on their housing targets in recent years, with a shortfall of circa 900 properties, as confirmed by Bolton's own housing team. Demand for affordable housing in Bolton is increasing, but supply is decreasing. Turnover of existing stock is low, and not enough homes are being built quickly enough to provide the additional homes Bolton needs. This development will go some way to address the shortfall, delivering a range of affordable units to meet local need. We have recently experienced at our Withens Drive development in Braemar, which was delivered in partnership with Bolton at Home. The first 10 homes drew 750 bids. This site presents a valuable opportunity to deliver much-needed housing in Bolton, particularly affordable housing. It will deliver jobs through the construction phase and accords with both national and local planning policy. There are no material planning considerations why this application should not be approved. We hope that you can support it, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question from members. Councillor Peel, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just in terms of the internal layout of the site, there's several houses and a large apartment block, which, from the objector, seems to be quite contentious. Can you just talk us through the rationale behind that? Why that apartment block was considered rather than a collection of two-storey houses, ordinary houses in a cul-de-sac formation?
Thank you. Viability of the development, basically. We need to get the right number of units to make it viable for the developer to make it worthwhile.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mark. We talked about the trees already felled, which the objector gave an example. How many trees are due to be felled in the future if this application is approved? Sorry.
Thank you for your question. So, if I may just quickly just tally them up. So there are some groups of trees, and within these groups of trees, there may be a collection of 6 or 7. So I'm going to class those groups as trees as just one tree for now. So I'm counting approximately 26 trees.
But some of those single trees would actually be groups of 6.
So within that 26, there are some groups which may contain a number of trees, but we don't have the exact numbers because a lot of them are self-seeded.
Yeah, one thing that was talked about initially that seems to have disappeared is about the nature of the tenancies. Now, I know originally this was supposed to be constructed in conjunction with Bolton at Home, but now I think they're talking to Irwell Valley about it. And initially there was some talk about shared ownership of the houses and also a belief, and I know this is mainly a tenancy operation and not the developers, but you must have had considerations about it. There was some talk about this being for an over 55s only. Now, I don't see it anywhere in the report. It was talked about initially, but it now seems to be absent. Do you know what the current situation of that is?
I know that the developer is currently speaking to Irwell Valley, as you said. Regarding tenancy, unfortunately, I don't have that information.
Fair enough, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned earlier about viability being the reasoning for the current layout, apartments and the number of houses. Was viability also a reason why, as the objective previously said, 3-storey to 4-storey, was that due to viability as well?
I have to say yes, it was to try and get the numbers to the correct quantity.
Councillor Brady again.
Okay, so you're suggesting that if it were to be 3-storey, it wouldn't be viable?
That's what I'm led to believe, yeah, from our developer.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan, please.
It's along the same lines, really, with regards to viability. I really can't see how this site cannot be viable if the applicant only paid £1 for it.
Regarding the sale of the site values, I'm not to be honest, I don't have that information, so I can't answer that one.
What would you say average is of the project build is the cost of a site in a normal? This is obviously not a normal site, but how much does the land cost and the projected cost for the site for a typical building, say?
Microphone,
If you can't
Microphone, Councillor Morgan, please.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have that information. I can't give an answer on that because I'm just working for the architecture team.
Thank you. Councillor Howarth.
Lots of questions today, isn't it, Mr. Marr? I'll try. We've heard that there's what's called fall short on the size of the space for each flat. Have you got anything to say about that in relation to minimum standards that we're often guided by? Thank you.
Yeah, the national described space standards, we understand, aren't adopted by Bolton Council at this moment. So the sizes of the apartments do fall short of NDSS sizes, but we also consider that the size of the projecting balconies, which is external space, if that was added to the area, then we'd be very close to that. But for Homes England funding, we understand Homes England are happy with the unit sizes that we're proposing, and they're happy to give funding based on the unit sizes that aren't 100% of that size, but we're within the 85%.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Could I just ask two questions? I wonder if officers can bring the overall plan photo up, please. Yeah, can you scroll through? Oh, that's it. That's nice. Can I just ask, Mr. Mack, you mentioned that this is mainly a brownfield site. Now, unless my eyesight is really going, I can go back. Stay there. I can only see two buildings on there, which I presume could be classed as brownfield. All the rest looks, well, green. What is the you've made that statement, this is a brownfield site, so therefore can you inform me what of this site is brownfield? And the other, I will go back to viability.
So the site boundary that's shown in red there, that is one site under private ownership of the existing dwelling that sits on the site, which is the existing bungalow that you can see there. There is an existing bungalow which is to be demolished to create that access road. The area in green, that is protected land. It's not been built on and it can't be built on. So that is the status of it as we understand it.
Can I just, well, when you say that the site's brownfield, some of us have been here a while and we know the difference between a greenfield site, a brownfield site and a mixture. That's got a bit of brownfield in it, not the wide sweeping statement it is a brownfield site. But going back to viability, I have to say this, and occasionally I've said it to developers and applicants, if you come and make a statement in front of planning committee and give it as a factual statement about viability, then you've got to be able to back it up with the information which you've made the statement before planning committee, presumably to persuade planning committee that this site is only viable with this type of units. So the point that Councillor Morgan quite rightly made is you paid £1. So where is the viability of this site coming from against costs? You mentioned Homes for England providing grant funding. There seems to be a mishmash around here about what you paid for, what it's going to cost you, and what are you going to get. So can you clarify viability?
I think, Mr. Marr, if it is that that's not within your purview, you're simply at liberty to pass that question.
Unfortunately, yeah, I've got to pass that question, I'm afraid.
We do not normally allow more than one speaker, I'm afraid. But if you could give a two-sentence response, please, not an extended response. Thank you. Okay, so it is not a £1 valuation. Okay, thank you. Councillor Peel, did you want to come back? Right, thank you, Mr. Marr. Sorry, Councillor Rimmer.
So we've heard from the residents that one of the major concerns is about privacy and the fact that the land is being raised to build this block of flats. And I can see from the planning report that the land is indeed being raised to almost create a flat plateau. Was any consideration given to actually lowering the land instead to reduce the impact on residents?
Sure. So the topographical survey does show levels, and I can see them here. But because of the naturally sloping site running from running from south down to north, there is some massaging of the levels that we have to do to create, as you say, a bit of a plateau and to create a consistent ground floor level. So if you do assess the levels, you can see that we're not raising the building out of the existing levels. It's almost a bit partially sunken into the existing levels, and then some bits may need a bit of building up to achieve the ground floor level. With the statement from the objector earlier about how it's adding up an extra level to create a 5-storey building, it's nowhere near as tall as a storey. It's a lot lower than that.
Thank you. Councillor McCulkin, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hoping this is within your scope for answer. The biodiversity issue. I've got to say, reading through the report, the 3% claim of a net gain is very, very questionable in terms of reading through that report. What I wanted to ask was, done surveys in regards to water bowls, etc., and nesting of birds, some of which are on quite protected lists. I understand that both of those reports, i.e. the water bowl one, was carried out of season when you would normally do a study to see if water bowls are, that's part of their habitat. And the bird survey was also done outside of what would be considered the sort of nesting season when you would find these birds, which also causes a great deal of concern because it gives a false impression in terms of that report. Could you comment on that? Thank you.
Sure. So the latest biodiversity statement that we've got from our ecology consultant, Tyra, they did an assessment to see if there was any physical evidence of water voles, and they concluded that there wasn't. I didn't know which part of the season it was done, whether it was within their sort of breeding season or not, but that's the information, the way I understand it. Regarding birds, that's something that I can't give an answer whether it was done in or out of the season, to be honest. But I do know that we've got bird boxes to allow for nesting provided. With the first point about the 3%, that is reflected in the matrices that is on the planning website, but that was before we've adjusted the proposals, the landscaping proposals, where we're now going to add a long line of hedgerows to the west of the apartment block, which, if we were to do it again, that should undoubtedly increase the biodiversity net gain.
Thank you very much. No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Smart. We come then to question to officers. Councillor Allen, did you want to put your question to officer? No. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Peel.
I think it's the same question Councillor Allen was going to ask. There's obviously 2 points of view being given here. We're being told in the report that there's a net gain of 25% biodiversity. And I think when the planning officer presented this, she took us through how that rose during negotiations worse, whereas we've been told by the objector it's a 10% net gain. Do we have any explanation as to why there's... Sorry, 3% when the national target is 10%, yeah. Do we have any explanation as to why there's some confusion here and what the actual answer is?
Paragraph 65, Councillor. Paragraph 65.
Oh, thanks, Councillor. I'll try to explain it. The biodiversity metric is in 3 sections, so it looks at 3 separate types of units when it's doing the overall assessment. So the first units are the habitats units, which is where the applicant for this development is gaining the 25% increase. Second units that are looked at are river units. There's no rivers involved in this. Well, there's a brook, but it's negative, so it's 0%. There's nothing being changed to that. There's no development that's affecting that brook. And the third units are the hedgerow units, which are separate to the habitat units. And there's a loss here of 22%. So when you calculate those 3 units together, that gives you the 3% biodiversity gain, which the applicant's proposing. However, as the applicant explained, and I think I explained within my summary, that since that metric was done, they've introduced further hedgerows. However, they've not recalculated that metric, so we don't know how much gain there is further than the 3%. So currently we only know that there's 3%. It may be that there's more. We don't know if that's going to cover the 22% because it hasn't been rerun. In terms of the 10% minimum requirement, that is going to be coming into legislation in 2023, but it's going to be a mandatory requirement that all new planning developments must gain at least 10% increased biodiversity. So that's going to be across the 3 separate units as a combined total. So in this case, it's 3%, but we know for sure it's 3% without including the additional hedgerows. Unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have that threshold of the 10%. The national policy requirement is just for an enhancement, for a biodiversity net gain. It doesn't give you a figure. So basically anything that's significant, well, over 0% is by definition a net gain.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Sorry.
Thanks. That does actually make sense now. The other point that was made by the objector is that he has email from the planning officer dealing with this that states that in the pre-planning discussions it was stated that a 4-storey apartment block was not compatible. Can committee get the rationale behind whether that statement was made? If it was made, why is that statement now seemingly been unmade?
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, it is correct that in the pre-application discussions with the applicant, I had said it's a 4-storey building would be out of character, and I still do agree with that statement, and you'll probably see in my report that I have referred to the fact that it is out of character in the fact that there's no other buildings within the vicinity that of that height. But I have explained within my assessment, I don't consider that alone is a reason to render the application unacceptable. You have to look at the wider impact. So that is correct that it is out of character in that sense, and that is what I've said in the pre-op, and I still stand by that advice that I gave at that time.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, back to the biodiversity. The report by Tyrers, which I think was commissioned by the applicant, was referred to. And I'm told that it makes it very clear there that doing a simple mathematics sum is incorrect, shouldn't be done. What should happen is each aspect of biodiversity should be looked at individually. So, okay, there may have been improvements on the hedgerow biodiversity, but the last figures we have is still, it's minus 22%. So saying plus 3, Tyrers themselves, I understand, the consultants employed by the applicant judged that that isn't the way it should be done. Isn't that correct?
I'm afraid I can't answer that because it's technical. So I don't know. I'm only advised by the ecology unit who have agreed that there is a biodiversity net gain. Sorry, I'd like to just reiterate that the metric goes to the ecology unit for them to comment, not for the planning officer to assess. Thanks.
I'm sorry, we can't take. I'm sorry, we can't take further interventions. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to follow on from what Councillor Wilkinson was saying earlier on about the officers confirm if the whole plot is brownfield or if there are elements of greenfield within there.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. It is stated within the officer's report that the site is mainly a greenfield site. It's only the areas where the two bungalows are that would be brownfield, so it is a mix, but it's mainly greenfield.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. Stand back. One to Mrs. Williams, which I think you may not be able to answer, so my apologies up front. And the other is to the solicitor. Don't get asked very often, but yeah, one for you today, Nicola. To Mrs. Williams, we've had the biodiversity levels and the impact. The objector, in his statement, clearly identified that something in the region of 40 plus trees have been removed. That, in my simple layman terms, alters everything what's on site to start off with, because you've taken 40 odd items where wildlife, insects, etc. Involved on that site. Was that in any shape or form taken into consideration? And my other question to the solicitor is, this was council land, and I'd refer members, some of it was council land, I'd refer members to when we disposed of Bolton at home. And some of us were around at the time, and one of the conditions with Bolton at home, anybody who's seen one of the estates will know full well, they've got, particularly the pre-war estates, a considerable number of trees on them. And one of the terms of the disposal to Bolton at home of all the estates, all trees were in fact protected. It seems a bit strange that we dispose of council stock, and there is TPOs and woodland orders imposed on all of those, but we have a small piece of land which we dispose of, which ends up with nothing. Is there a double standard in how we dispose of land compared to the Bolton at home disposal?
Oh, do you want me to go first? Sorry, Nicola. Yeah, sorry. With regards to the trees that have been felled on the triangular piece of land being taken into consideration with the metric, I can't confirm whether or not that is the case, but they should have done within the metric, because you do need to take into account trees that have been felled prior to an application coming in, because obviously there's a lot of instances that we're probably aware of as a committee where trees have been felled prior to an application coming in. So that was being brought in with the guidance to ensure that doesn't happen.
In relation to the second point, I mean, there is a TPO on this land that protects some of the trees. Yeah, so I'm not... some of the trees are protected, and in the report it outlines that if permission was granted, then a further TPO would be made to protect the remaining trees. But as for what happened when the land was transferred to Bolton at home, I can't answer that. That would be a separate department that deals with that within the legal section.
Councillor Sherrington. Councillor Sherrington, Councillor Hayes believes he can help with that, to answer that query. So I'm going to take him first and I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll let you butt in first later. I was actually involved in casework with this land being sold. And I know the ones with TPO is actually part of the land that was originally with the bungalow. The triangular piece of land had no TPO on any of the trees, so I understand it. So that's the difference.
Thank you. Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. I'm so kind. Anyway, I'd just like to ask Ms Williamson a question regarding to minimum standards. The minimum standards of the apartments are below. The apartments are below the minimum standards unless you go and walk out onto the balcony. So that's what I gather from what I've been told. As far as we're concerned in Bolton, we've always looked for above minimum standards if we possibly can have them, never below. And we've actually been in here, in this chamber, and refused on many occasions applications, no matter how good they looked or anything, because the standards that they were going to give the people who were going to live in Bolton was so bad that it wasn't fair for them to have to live in those conditions. So that's number one, is why have we given approval to something that we know is below minimum standards and is something that we would never accept normally in a Bolton Planning Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. With regards to the floor spaces, if the balconies were taken into consideration, it would be the one-bedroom flats would meet the minimum standards. The two-bedroom flats would be 1 square metre less than minimum standards. As we officers will often say within committee, unfortunately the council currently doesn't have a planning policy to ensure that the minimum standards are met. Until that time, we're just reliant on the nationally described space standards, which are a material consideration. However, we don't consider that we consider that it should only carry some weight because we don't have a policy that reflects that national guidance. So in this instance, we've recognised it as a disadvantage of the scheme, hence officers have included that in the report. However, we don't think sufficient planning weight can be attached to that. We don't think that in itself would result in a refusal of the application just on that ground.
Councillor Sherrington.
All it is that it's a national standard. I know that Bolton, we normally like things above that, but this has been not even come up to the national standards. You know, like I say, unless you go and walk out onto your balcony, you've not come up to national standards on the singles. On those that have got 2 bedrooms, it's like I say, it's metres short. And therefore, I do think that that should have been considered very, very strongly, seeing how we in the Planning Committee do actually take on board the national standards. So I would have liked it to have not been approved on this particular case. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can I ask a question for clarification from some confusion that may have arisen earlier? There was some discussion, Mrs Williams, about whether land levels were being altered and raised. Could you comment on that aspect of the application, please?
Yes, thanks, Councillor. In regards to the apartments, I think it's probably clearest shown in cross-section AA, which is on page... Sorry, my eyesight's not that good. 37, I think it says. Which shows that because obviously the ground has to be level to accommodate the apartments, that it is going to be cutting into the land on the southern side. However, on the northern side, it's to be raised to accommodate the level. So there's a bit of a cut and fill.
Thank you for that clarification. No further questions, officers. The matter is now open for debate. Councillor Hayes.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Interesting questions, for the longest session I've ever sat on through questions here. Now, this application's been around a very long time, and in fact, in another week or two, we have to think about getting it a Christmas card or a birthday card. And as you saw from some of the photographs, they were taken at a time when there was still snow on the ground. That's another indication. To be fair, this is a very complicated application with over 160 documents. Quite a lot of reading when you're trying to get up to touch with it. there's also been quite a lot of amendments on the way. Now, the sale of the land has been referred to, and I was involved with the owner of the site and the council at the time that happened. And I can confirm there was nothing underhand about it at all, and I think that the borough solicitor has written to people who questioned that. But I don't want people think there was anything underhand in that at all. The positive aspect of this application, and I think we have to concentrate on that to start with, is that this would provide a net gain of 41 dwellings, all of them affordable. Now that's a starting point, and they're in very short supply in Bolton, so that's valuable. But I happen to believe that this is the wrong development on the wrong site, and I'm going to remove refusal, and I'll go very clearly through why I think we had to refuse this site. There have been a lot of trees felled and others going to be felled, which will have massive effects on biodiversity. And if people have read the host of documents that have come in from very concerned neighbours, some very knowledgeable concerned neighbours, they specify basically that the number of breeds of birds, a number of them on the red endangered list, several on the amber list, which regularly visit and breed on this site. There are also hedgehogs, which at one time were very common, but we now know are endangered. Hedgehogs breed in that area. There's bat roosts. And as I understand it, some of the trees that are proposed to be removed may not be the roosts, but they certainly where those bats forage. And it would very seriously affect those bats in the area. We've heard there's no water vole survey being carried out, although there is evidence that the stream may not be suitable for water voles. But I believe, for one, that the survey should at least have been carried out to see whether there's another endangered species that is affected. Now, this is predominantly a greenfield site within the urban area, and it's valuable because of the high range of both plant and animal life there, and it remains part of the wildlife corridor that did exist, and to an extent still does, between Doffcocker Lodge and the moors via Barrow Bridge. It's a very important site for that, very important site. It said in paragraph 65, we dealt with this a lot, that there'll be a net diversity gain of 3%. It's already, I think, been established by people that the TIRAS survey itself, which came from the applicants, says you should not simply net off the gains and losses in biodiversity. You should look at each of them. And I think that that's probably a problem. We know we should be looking for at least a 10% gain, although that's not legislatively enforceable for a couple of years. Surely we as Bolton should be looking at that as a guide now, and this would not reach that. A recent report shows that Britain has lost half of its natural biodiversity. Britain is the worst of all G7 countries and is the bottom 10% of countries globally for losing its biodiversity. We're in that position because we've allowed development on too many unsuitable sites. And I argue this is one of those unsuitable sites. Council officers, we've been told, and that's been confirmed, advised the developer early in the process that there would need to be at least a 10% net gain. That has not been achieved, or at least not demonstrably so. That's the first reason for urging refusal. The second reason I've got is a proposed 4-storey building. It is totally out of character with this area, which comprises a mix of traditional 2-storey houses and bungalows. There isn't even a 3-storey building in this area, let alone a 4-storey building, let alone a 4-storey building which is made higher by the land being raised. That would be visible, highly visible, from various vantage points, and definitely from the footpaths which pass through the site and near the site. It would, if approved, we'd be setting a very unfortunate precedent, I think, for that area. It's also been pointed out that it is not a particularly well-designed, attractive-looking block. Despite one or two balconies, it would be very stark in the area. So I think it's definitely out of character. And that's the second reason I would give for refusal. We've talked about the nationally described space standards, and for once I totally agree with Councillor Sherrington on this. We should be adopting this. We're short by 5 square metres for the one-bedroom flats and by 3.5 square metres for the two-bedroom flats. If you then add the balconies, and we know in the Bolton climate, a 4-metre balcony is something that you wouldn't exactly go out and use in January and February, to me, it doesn't mitigate enough for that. And when you are able to use the balcony, almost certainly the doors will be open to the flat, which will actually negate any soundproofing elements that we're trying to put in. So I think there'll be disturbance to neighbours from that as well. So I think we have to say it doesn't meet the standards. We should not be approving it for that reason. Now, another issue that I would like to raise is parking. Now, we meet the standards that the council sets, but 49 parking spaces for 28 one-bedroom apartments, 7 two-bedroom apartments, 6 three-bedroom houses, and 2 two-bedroom houses is said to be satisfactory. I believe it's very tight and makes no allowance at all for visitors. That is going to lead, I am sure, to an increase in parking on nearby roads. Now, I think it's a pity that we weren't able to see the site, because I think a site visit would have shown very well some of the problems we're talking about, the slope of the land, the visibility there would be. But we haven't, and that's a situation, and I'm not blaming anybody for that, but it is a pity. We talk in the report about tilted balance, and the office has come to the conclusion that tilted balance is in favour of approval. I totally disagree. I think any tilted balance is for refusal of this application. So, Chair, I would move that the committee refuse the application on the grounds of unacceptable loss of trees and effects on biodiversity, the 4-storey apartment block being out of character for the area, and the unacceptable effect on present and future residents due to the inadequate space standards of the apartments and the likely effects of noise pollution. I move that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Councillor Brady, please.
Thank you, Chair. The loss of wildlife, loss of trees is a massive concern. However, it's a fact that these apartments do not meet the minimum standards for the people who live in them. That is a deciding factor for me. We've previously refused applications on those grounds because when people are living in places, they should have adequate space, and that's what the minimum standard is there to provide. So on those grounds, I would be happy to support to second Councillor Hayes' motion.
Thank you, Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of the things I wanted to say have been said by Councillor Hayes. I agree with most of the things that he said, so I won't be going into the details again, but I'll be supporting refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Peel.
I'm not going to repeat what Councillor Hayes said. I've been making some notes straight, and he's pretty much covered everything I was going to say. I just want to just give a note of warning, really, that greenfield does not necessarily mean protected land, and I just think for people who are watching this committee need to understand that it doesn't necessarily mean protected. A future scheme could well come in for this land, which is a lot more compatible. But what Councillor Hayes said about the size and scale of the mass of the apartment building being completely out of character is true, and I think we've heard it from planning officers that was their consideration as well, but they used the tilted balance due to our under-delivery on housing targets, I think, more than anything. I think the objector accepted that there may well be a development on this site. I think I would certainly encourage Irwell Valley or whoever's involved with this site to come back with a much better scheme that's more in keeping with the area. But on saying that, this application, I would happily refuse it.
Thank you very much. Can I commend members so far in avoiding the just-a-minute rule of hesitation, deviation, repetition? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be well within the 3-minute rule. Councillor Hayes has admirably summed up what the real objections are to this site. But I just want to mention briefly the issue of viability, which the presenter brought out. And I'm getting a bit fed up, frankly, of this committee and planning officers being bullied by the threat of viability. Developers buy a plot of land and then come to us and argue that unless they fill it to the maximum with high density accommodation, then it's not viable. Well, if that's the case, perhaps they shouldn't have bought the plot of land in the first place. You know, I don't think it's for this committee or even planning officers to, to allow inappropriate development and overdevelopment and out of character development simply because that's the only way the developer can make money. So I'm just getting a bit fed up of being bullied under the threat of viability. But have no doubt I will be supporting refusal of this application, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howarth.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come at it slightly differently, when I hone in on material matter around national minimum standards, I think the way that it was set out as explanation from the applicant, on some occasions I'm going to say that, well, I could be persuaded on that, but I think the standout for me is that this is not appropriate. It's not what I wanted to be faced with, a block of apartments on this plot with the other issues that we've had explained to us. I don't actually want to support something that falls short on the size of the flats, on the size of the apartments, because then we get into the conversation about amenity, then we get into the issues of noise and concerns, and basically about, to some extent, apartments living cheek by jowl with an environment that is very predominantly bungalow, very predominantly cul-de-sac, very predominantly residential. So, of course, I do support the position of refusal and hope also that a further application certainly considers very clearly and fully the amenity and space of whatever home environment is brought forward in a future application. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I will support refusal on the grounds that have been argued by Councillor Hayes. But I'd just like to support two other members in the remarks they've made, which is a common theme which has been made a number of times now at Planning Committee. The point that Councillor Sherrington has made, this has been made numerous times, and we're told we don't have a policy. But we've asked about, should we have a policy? And again, I think that point has been made and made and made and made. But we seem to keep coming with applications where officers are saying, it's not good enough, it doesn't meet standard, but it's okay. But we keep, well, members of this committee keep saying, it ain't okay. So somebody's not listening somewhere. And the other point made by Councillor Allen is on that theme of planning committee is trying to ensure that the plan applications have good standards, whether it's about space in flats, the point that Councillor Allen made about being, and I think the point you made, Bob, is about being bullied, is correct. We are being arm twisted. And the other one is around the issue of viability. We had one the other week when we had last planning committee about, well, I can't make 25% profit and I'm giving you nothing in terms of 106. These things are constantly coming before us, and we're having our arm put up our back. Not say by you, but I have the feeling that my arm is up my back sometimes, and I don't like that. And I think some other people within the global building, shall I say, what was happening, should be listening to what members of the planning committee are trying to say, because it is about trying to ensure good planning applications and good planning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I see no further indications. It's been moved and seconded refusal. based on the loss of trees and biodiversity, the four-storey aspect, the inadequate space standards. I'm going to actually introduce a further one because knowing the site, I find the access on Grisdale close to Bleasdale Road not a particularly good one. And I do think there are highway issues, particularly in weather, adverse weather conditions. I think that's a further condition that we ought to impose if other members concur as a further reason for refusal. Okay, on that basis, it has been moved and seconded refusal. We will therefore take a vote. Members are voting straightforwardly for refusal or against refusal.
Councillor Allen. For. Councillor Ayub. For. Councillor Brady. For. Councillor Connor. For. Councillor Dean. For. Councillor Finney. For. Councillor Howarth. For. Councillor Hayes. For. Councillor McMulkin. For. Councillor Mistry. For. Councillor Morgan. For. Councillor Peel. For. Councillor Rimmer. For. Councillor Sanders. For. Councillor Sherrington. For. Councillor Walsh. For. Councillor D. Wilkinson. For. Councillor T. Wilkinson.
That application is refused. Could I ask members of the public, please, if you could leave the gallery quietly? We have further business to conduct, other important applications. Could I ask you please to leave quietly?
We've been informed Richard Sherry's isn't attending, is isolating. And he's provided some slides and said, can we, I've already put them on the late list, so there's nothing to add.
We've already on the late list.
I think, yeah, on the late list. So.
Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please, can we... I'm not going to say order. Please, can we resume the meeting? Thank you very much. The next application is Moor Lane Bus Station, 12097/21. Can I, before we start this, we did have an objector listed. Unfortunately, he's not able to attend, Richard Sheares, but he has sent an extended statement which was circulated to members, and officers will refer to that in their presentation. We come therefore to that application for Moor Lane Bus Station. Martin Mansell, I think, is dealing with this one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. So, Consensus sought to construct a new development of 208 homes, including 82 affordable homes, together with new commercial space in its own land comprising the former Moor Lane Bus Station, together with two nearby parcels of land on either side of the job centre on Blackhawk Street. The proposed development consists of two 6-storey apartment blocks on Moor Lane, 44 3-storey townhouses in the central part of the site, and two 4-storey apartment blocks either side of the job centre behind Le Mans Crescent. The application also proposes new hard and soft landscaping, public realm improvements to surrounding highways, and two linear parks, one of which would run west from the arches of Le Mans Crescent. The officer's report assesses the proposal against the relevant considerations, character and heritage, setting of the area on housing supply, road network, surface water drainage, biodiversity, noise, sustainability, and finds it acceptable, indeed beneficial in many respects. Now, I've kept my introduction very short there, members, because you'll see that the late list is rather long, for which I apologise. Whoever received a number of representations after the report, which was completed, I'll need to take you through, together with a couple of very minor matters outstanding from the officer's report. So, you'll see on the late list we've received a strongly worded letter from the Chair of the Traders Association of Bolton Market on the basis that it will increase the customer base for the market and support those small businesses, something that we agree with entirely. We've also received an objection from Councillor Zaman, who's obviously the ward councillor for Halliwell Ward, one of them, who's concerned that the route through the site will be used as a rat run by drivers. So we've sought a view on that from the applicant's team, and you may wish to ask the supporter about the urban design reasons for why the road is proposed as it is. But we also asked our own highway engineers to advise us on that. Their view is that the proposed arrangement of a one-way system taking access from Blackhorse Street and exiting onto Moor Lane is the correct one. The reason for that is it's just standard good practice to have your point of access off the lowest category road, which in this case would be Blackhorse Street. If it was to be accessed from Moor Lane, then that would involve any vehicles travelling north on Moor Lane, wanting to turn right into the site, would have to cross the 2 lanes of traffic and basically what is the outer highway box of Bolton Town Centre, a major route. They also consider that there would be only limited benefit for drivers using the site as a rat run. They may avoid the traffic lights at the Deansgate and Moor Lane Junction, but they would then have to emerge onto Moor Lane with no light, no traffic control, and just basically have to wait for a gap in traffic. We also think that Blackhorse Street, since the bus station has closed, now carries a lot less traffic than it used to. It's mainly buses. And really the predominant, and one of the reasons for that is Knowsley Street is not available for drivers coming south. So there isn't really, the only real driver for vehicles in that area is the Central Street car park, which, as members know, is proposed to be closed and developed. Also, the design review panel, highway engineers and planning officers all agree with the applicant that the right thing to do is to have a narrow single one-way carriageway designed in a way so as to stress the pedestrian priority over vehicles. If members take a different view, ultimately the design of the road through the site is a matter of a condition, and we could seek to resolve it at a later date. I also received this morning an objection from Councillor Sylvester after the late list was circulated, which I've shared via email and some members may have seen. Councillor Sylvester's view is that there should be no development at all immediately to the rear of Le Mans Crescent. He says it to be unnecessary and inappropriate, and that it should be made into public open space. But setting aside the benefits that are identified in the report of increasing the residential population of Bolton Town Centre, contribution to housing supply, all the policy documents that the council has adopted, so that's Building Bolton, the Town Hall Conservation Area Appraisal and the Town Centre Framework, all support the principle of the development of the plot to the north of the job centre in order to enclose and better frame the views of the central archway feature of Le Mans Crescent. And the principle of developing, for that reason, in order to better frame the central part of the rear of Le Mans Crescent, development at this site has the support of, again, Historic England, Council's Conservation Officer, and the peer review process via RIBA Northwest. Councillor Sylvester is suggesting that it be provided with green walls. Our view is, the policy position is development should be compatible with its context in terms of materials, which, in our view, the development achieves. Our concern would be that the use of green walls immediately to the rear of Le Mans Crescent would have the potential to detract from the dominance of Le Mans Crescent by way of contrast. And our view is that the greenery should be provided within the streets themselves rather than on the building, and that's what the public realm proposals seek to do. He raises the point about flat roofs that I know members have discussed, or certainly been raised previously, and I do cover the flat roof point in my report, but again, it was a clear recommendation of the design review panel that a domestic and suburban feel should be avoided here. It allows for the provision of the cutaway terraces, and it would allow for the provision of solar panels on the roof if that becomes necessary in order to achieve your policy of 10% betterment over building regulations. Clearly, buildings with pitch roof, Councillor Sylvester provided some photographs of buildings in the area that do have pitched roofs, and clearly they do exist, but there are also buildings with flat roofs. The Court Building, buildings either side of the former Albion Public House. Le Mans Crescent looks as if it has a pitched roof, but it actually has a flat roof with a fake pitched roof. There are other buildings such as the Octagon and the entire western side of Newport Street, Crompton Place. So the context is actually mixed in terms of pitched roofs and flat roofs. So what do? We should look at what the policy in the development plan says. It says new development should be compatible with its context. Context is mixed, therefore our view is that the proposed development cannot by definition be incompatible by way of using flat roofs. It raises the issue of maintenance of flat roofs, but our view is that's primarily a private matter for the owners or occupiers of a building and wouldn't be a planning consideration. The final point he raises is the use of wooden fences and suggests that brick should be used instead. The boundary treatment shows the use of brick in publicly visible areas and timber in the more enclosed areas such as the rear courtyards. That covers Councillor Sylvester's representation. We also this week received two representations, again after the report was finalised, we received two representations from Bolton District Civic Trust, one from the chair, who as the chair of our committee says, had intended to speak today but is unable to, and one from a member of the trust. I don't intend to go through all the points that they've raised. They are set out in the late list. Hopefully you'll see I've done my best on there to summarise all the issues raised and respond to them as best I can. One issue that I do want to refer to that the Trust have raised is the accuracy of an image that's been provided to show the view, the impact of the building to the north of the job centre on Le Mans Crescent, and they've provided their own version of this image, which again is provided on the late list, their version of how, in their view, the building will look against Le Mans Crescent. In response to that, the applicant provided a further CGI, which is also on the late list and should be looping on the images at some point. That was provided by an architectural visualiser with 25 years' experience, and he's provided his methodology for creating the image, which we have no grounds to question. But ultimately, members, we take the view that people don't experience buildings in a stationary manner. That's the applicant's CGI on the screen now there. People don't experience buildings in a stationary manner. They move around them and will experience different views depending on where they are at that point in time. And we have to reiterate that we're satisfied with the impact on the rear of Le Mans Crescent as our historic England, our own conservation area and the independent Reba North West panel. And in fact, we think it would be beneficial for the reasons of framing and enclosure that I've talked about. So, very lastly, apologies for the length of that, I do want to confirm that Council's pollution control and flood risk officers are satisfied with all the submitted information in terms of noise, land contamination, air quality and drainage. They do require further information via planning conditions. There may also be some minor changes in terms of plan references to relate to the new recently submitted and updated CGI images. So we feel that we've addressed all the relevant issues in the officer's report. We've taken all representations into account, and our view is the application complies with national and local planning policies and should be approved. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Mr Mansell. We then have a support of the application, Phil Hepworth. Can I come forward, please? You'll have seen no due process. If you press the appropriate button, and you've got 3 minutes to address committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Phil Hepworth, and I'm a director at AW Architects, and I want to extend my thanks to yourself for taking the time to hear our application today. We've been working closely with our client Step Places and Bolton at Home over the past 12 months to design the scheme that's in front of you. Our brief was to create an exciting, vibrant, mixed-use neighbourhood in the heart of Bolton Town Centre that provides high-quality living across a range of tenures within townhouses and apartments. The provision of a significant amount of on-site public realm and in the form of hard and soft landscaping has also been central to this vision. Providing spaces for residents and visitors to relax and unwind, also to create new connections across Blackhorse Street, Market Street to Le Mans Crescent and Cheadle Square. When we started to prepare our designs for the site, we spent time getting under the skin of the council's aspirations for the town centre and the wider goals outlined in the town centre master plan. An experienced team was assembled by our client to provide us with the support and guidance on important technical matters such as planning, heritage, highways, flood, drainage, noise and sustainability. Their expertise played a key role in the design evolution to ensure that the scheme is wholly policy compliant. We have also carefully engaged with a number of parties during the pre-application design evolution over the past few months, which has included Places Matter, Historic England, ward councillors and also the Bolton and District Civic Trust. In addition, we have listened to feedback provided by the public as part of the 2-week consultation that was undertaken by our client in August. In terms of the design proposals, the scheme is a context-driven, landscape-led and comprises of 164 apartments, 44 new urban townhouses and a small number of commercial units. All the dwellings provide ample cycle facilities and are designed to comply and exceed nationally described space standards, exceed Part L of the building regs and incorporate a number of sustainable features. The master plan is designed to be people-focused with safety and security in mind, promoting passive surveillance and creating spaces which are safe and welcoming for visitors and residents alike. The arrangement and massing of the buildings has been set by the analysis of the context and key buildings such as Le Mans Crescent, and to create a civic feel and avoid a suburban character. The elevation mill design and materiality has been derived from an in-depth study of surrounding buildings, including the rhythm, proportion, hierarchy, roof forms, materiality and detailing. This established a brick material palette appropriate to the sensitive context that will stand the test of time and create a sense of place. The richness and detailing will be key to the success of the buildings and will help knit the development into the historic townscape. Following the submission of the planning application, we have continued to listen. We've made further revisions to the elements of the design, such as housing massing and landscape proposal. To conclude, our practice is extremely proud to be involved in this exciting scheme. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to bring activity and vibrancy to this unique site and to deliver an exciting new neighbourhood to Bolton Town Centre. Importantly, our joint clients, Step Places and Bolton at Home, are committed to delivery. Should planning be granted today, it is their aim to start on site in April next year with a view to completing the whole project by April 24. Thank you for listening. I do hope you're able to support your office's recommendation today and will be welcome to take any questions you may have.
Questions? Councillor Wilkinson?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Can I just go back to the... keep going. Unfortunately, I missed the briefing yesterday because of work commitments. Yeah. It's the new building, the 4-storey one on the side of the job centre. Well, that one, yes. Because this previous slide shows Cheadle Square landscaped, but we've got this still as a car park. I'm assuming the previous slide with the landscaping and also is right and that's wrong. Yeah.
So we were given a view by the Bolton and District Civic Trust that showed our building adjacent to what currently exists in Cheadle Square. Cheadle Square is not part of our application. We've been engaging on the Towns Fund, so Cheadle Square is a separate application as part of the Towns Fund, but we've obviously taken that into account with our design, and our landscape extends that. So for me to show, what we were trying to do was be honest and say that what we're building will be this, but ultimately in the fullness of time, Cheadle Square will come forward. We were just trying to be genuine, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chair. One of the questions that was asked by Councillor Sylvester this morning was regarding the flat roofs and the design life, and he quoted 20 to 30 years. Can you comment on that, please?
Sorry. So the guarantees can be of that sort of period, but the design life's a lot more than that. I must say, flat roofs, what we think of as flat roofs, are very, very different now to what they were 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, the apartments themselves have flat roofs, and they're not a problem. So there's a number of different, and we will obviously be working up the detail with our client to ensure that, you know, they can be maintained in a sensible and efficient way. But ultimately, there's a lot of products out there like liquid plastics, which are kind of like laid, like liquid form. And they are laid to a slight fall, and there'll be a gutter, and the gutters we're showing are external, so you don't get leaves blocking it. So all those things are considered. So again, that's why we consider flat roofs to be a viable option. And also, if we can demonstrate that through projects that have been built by both of our clients. If that answers the question.
Councillor Brady again, please.
Solar panels. Sorry, you've not included solar panels. Can you tell me why not?
So we're still going through the detail in terms of the sustainability approach. There's a lot of sustainable features on the buildings, and solar panels are ones that are being looked at. So I think we're looking at solar panels on the apartment roofs, but at the moment we've got the ability to put solar panels on the houses, but we're not 100% sure whether we actually will put them on, because there are other sustainable methods within the houses that we'll be putting on. Similar to the previous applicant, we take fabric first approach, which includes air tightness and insulation. We've then got air source heat pumps and heat recovery systems, and there's lots of different systems that we look at. So that detail is still being worked through.
Thank you, Councillor Howarth.
Thank you very much. I want to just get a bit more of a sense from you on the linear parks. So can you tell me whether you feel that they're small linear parks? Okay. What I know so far is that one, I think, north is likely to be called Cheadle Gardens, I think. And the one south is possibly going to be called Octagon Park, and that relates to Bolton Market. So you're nodding as if you've given, no, okay, but you're nodding as if you feel like you've given a sizable amount of green space. But what I want to understand then is your decision around the placing of the large four-storey building, the larger of the two, I really mean, the larger of the two four-storey blocks, which is, it's block 3, and that's the one that's nearest to Cheadle Square, and it's very possible. So I need to understand, why am I experiencing this difference of you wanting to do a fair bit with green and openness, and yet I'm finding block 3 quite large and profound?
There is a significant amount of green space on this site. I know that we were talking on the previous application about biodiversity net gain. I think the figure we've quoted is 262%. It's vast. And we've got the benefit of the Towns Fund to help us implement this phenomenal green space that runs across the front. We've got to balance this, an urban setting this, so we're looking at the urban grid that exists around here. So what Block 3 and Block 4 do is sit either side of the job centre and complete that urban grid, which is what you would expect in a town centre. What we have done to try and lessen the mass is chamfer the corners on that as well. Now, so really the size of the block is determined by the historic street form. What we have done is set the buildings back slightly to widen the pavements, and Cheadle Square, which, as I've said before, is shown kind of there, it's not part of our scheme, has been preset, is a set size, and is actually quite wide. So my view is, I don't think it is a particularly large building, and especially when you walk around Le Mans, there are buildings that are bigger that do what we've done and filled the square. I don't know if that's answered your question, but it is very much context driven and getting that grid and street alignment in. And that was something that when we presented to Places Matter first time and second time, that they were very supportive of. Is that all right? Okay, sorry.
Councillor Peel.
Thanks, Chair. Answering Councillor Howarth, you've said quite a bit about the enhancements of green spaces area. Isn't it true, though, that the majority of, let's call it, for want of a better word, green space enhancement is actually outside of the red edge, and it's a result of the Towns Fund bid, the public realm area around this site, such as the new proposed Octagon Park, etc., in the area around that?
No, that's not true. So we are, within our pack, we are demonstrating how our scheme sits within the wider Towns Fund area. We engaged Gillespie's, who were the landscape architects that the council brought on board to help them win, to apply for that Towns Fund money. And so we've got a hand-in-glove approach in terms of landscape. All the landscape that's within our red line is in part funded by the Towns Fund, but is part of our development and will be delivered by our clients.
So in terms of the total investment from the Towns Fund into public realm, part of it is within the Moor Lane development site, and part of it is outside of that. That's true, isn't it?
Am I on? Sorry. So everything you can see on that plan there that's green within our site boundary is being delivered as part of our scheme. And yes, it is in part it is funded by the town's fund. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. Now, but it is worth saying, sorry, that includes the 2 linear parks that go towards the market and towards the Mons Crescent. It includes the green area that is, because there's the narrowing of Black Horse Street, so there's an additional green route down there. It's the green area to Moor Lane, and then the Octagon Park is separate, but obviously when that comes forward, it ties through in a cohesive way. The fact that you think it's part of the scheme is great, because that's what we wanted it to look like.
No, I didn't think it was part of the scheme. I just wanted us all to just be clear on that. There's actually 2 parallel schemes going on at the same time here. There's the Moor Lane development and there's the council's public realm works that wrap around that. That includes Cheadle Square, that includes Octagon Park, etc. I've, for clarity, Chair, long suggested that it should actually be presented together. It would be made clearer to members had that happened in the first place, because what we see before us is somewhat incomplete. My next question then is, in terms of the brief that you received to work up this plan, how much, in your opinion, or your organisation's opinion, was the flexibility from the council for their ability to diverge from their own broad master plan for the area? Were they open to suggestions to diverge from that master plan and start rethinking things? And the same question actually for the client, for Bolton Home, in terms of flexibility to move away from the master plan and think things afresh.
Is my client allowed to answer this question? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Sorry. Yeah, if I can just, there was a Farrell's master plan that had been done, and there was a number of other master plans that had been commissioned by the council that we basically took into account when we were developing it. In terms of the uses on the site, that obviously we were led by a client, and also in the interest of town centre development, in the benefit that it brings to the town. So there's been lots of things that have come together.
I suppose one of the reasons for me asking that was I was just interested in if having the design brief, you felt straitjacketed in any way by the council's master plan. Was there flexibility shown? For example, we heard earlier from planning officers that when they were talking about the objections, that green roofs and green walls weren't considered because they didn't feel that they would be compatible with the design brief. Did you feel that as well? Right, thanks for clarity.
Everything we've done, we stand by, and it's been a collaborative approach, but yeah, 100% with everything that we've done. And even, I would say that even when the town's fund was being worked up, we were collaborating with Gillespie's even before they were on board to make sure that there was nothing, that we were all pulling in the same direction. And actually, it's been a really nice process.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions and a comment. Keep going. We've got the overhead plan. Keep going. Oh, scroll faster. That one. Oh, that'll do. Yeah. Just in terms of, well, that one will do as well. They don't move, Martin. In terms of the buildings that we're looking at, obviously we're going to demolish the little block of shops where there's a little car park at the back next to the job centre. Unless I'm reading it wrong, I presume that block does have some retail space on ground floor. Yeah, right, okay. I'd be interested to understand what kind of amount, is it something equivalent to what's there at the moment, or maybe a bit more? Because obviously you have a direct link across the way from the market, and there's a possibility of additional independent style retail use, which we get in city centres. I work in Manchester all the time, and I walk around and I see various things. My son used to live in London. You had that kind of same thing, down on the bottom, over the top living. So I'd be interested to see what that is in relation to that spot. But on the other corner, where we're looking at the terraced houses, was there any thought given to having a larger building there? Because you've got the job centre, you've got a 4-storey block. It doesn't impact, in reality, on Le Mans Crescent, whether there was thought given to a taller building on that particular corner, because it's facing the market and 2 tall buildings on the other side in any case. Yes, where the houses are going, yes. This bottom right-hand corner, shall we say. Oh, sorry.
There's a lot of schemes that come forward that are all just apartments, get them in, get them high, and that's not what we were trying to do here. We were trying to get a mix of tenure, and that was our brief from the start, is to get a vibrant, mixed site. So when we were looking at getting that mix in here, putting the houses in the middle made a lot of sense to us. Now, the aerial view that was on before, you can start to see how the 2 4-storey buildings next to the job centre work as a cohesive block, and you can see how the houses, in terms of their scale, work with the market. So there's a lot of contextual cues taken. So we didn't look at putting something opposite the market because we didn't want to overshadow the market. The houses are very much there to frame that square, and we know, I've been liaising with the architects on that when they were looking at that square, and it's a separate scheme, but again, making sure that we're engaging with what's going on around us. So we understand what the aspiration is for there, and we certainly weren't trying to challenge it. Just on your other point about the commercial units, they are small. I will emphasise that. This is not about, we've got the high street literally a stone's throw away from us. This is not about challenging anything there. What we've got is we've got small commercial space at the bottom of the larger of the 4-storey blocks, as we talked about before, and the idea with those is that it will be a use that will be complementary to an over 55s product, which is what we're looking at there. It could be a cafe, it could be something of interest that would really take advantage of the views of Le Mans and the public realm that will come forward. On the other side, where we've got affordable rent, small little units, we're thinking, it might be a small cafe, it might be a small convenience store that supports what we're putting there, not that challenges anything. Who knows? It might be that, that some of the traders in the market decide they want to upgrade from the market but not be too far away, and maybe there's an opportunity there for that. We don't know at the moment. It's a space that could be those things, but it is quite insignificant in terms of the overall scheme.
Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. When it comes to art, right, I love a bit of abstract. But when it comes to buildings, I like a bit of symmetry. And I do think that if when you're coming out through the arches from Le Mans Crescent, if we had 2 pieces of green space there, and this building that you put on one side was further round, near to the red brick building that's further over. It used to be the old probation office, which is going towards the Hen and Chickens on that side. If that building was put on that side, and then you had the symmetry of 2 green spaces as you're coming out through the arches at Le Mans, I'm sure you wouldn't be getting any grief today. However, I do think that you are going to, because the big thing that is upsetting most people is that building at the side of the arches at Le Mans. So, as far as the houses are concerned, as far as the apartments are concerned, no problems from me. But I think you'll find that you've created yourself a little bit of a problem by the way that you've dealt with that particular block. So all I was going to say was, this is my question, was it even looked at, the possibility of putting it near where the red brick building is, which used to be the old, what did I say? Probation. The old probation place.
North, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, well, it's not part of our site, so in all honesty, it hasn't. However, what I will say is that my understanding is that from the documents that I've seen, the town centre documents that I've seen, it shows that at the site we've got our 4-storey building on as a development site. So there's never been a question of it not being a development site. It's not something that we've said, we don't think it should be green, it should be a built form. So we've really been according with the documents that have been provided to us that have been part of the council's master plan documents. What we have done is tried to create, because the job centre I don't think particularly presents very well to Cheadle. At least it's what? Stone. Well, we can come to that in a second. But so it doesn't present particularly well. So what we're trying to do is complete the block. We've tried to complete the block, we've set it back. And in terms of development on the other side, I mean, it does set the tone for development coming forward on the other side and framing the arches, which you would expect. So I understand, yeah, it could be a green park, but it's been set out as a development plot as far as we've known as part of our brief from the council. Just in terms of materials, and you've mentioned that. So the material choice was quite difficult. I've presented a number of times how we've arrived at our material selection and colour palette. We have gone with brick, not stone, because we felt that stone would start to look like it was part of the Le Mans complex, which is not what we're trying to do. We're trying to complement it and contrast with it. Now, clearly the exact colour of the bricks is something that we will have to engage with Martin on, but we've given what we think it's going to be. The Places Matter and Historic England all agreed with us in terms of the brick material and the colour selection that we've shown, subject to us standing on site and holding it against it and going, look, this is right. And what we've done with the brick buildings is we've tried to be restrained to keep them timeless, but we've built in a lot of brick detailing that we've taken from surrounding buildings, and we've made sure that the windows are sufficiently recessed to create interest in terms of shadows. So that's what we've got to in terms of the materiality. So
thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Picking up on what Councillor Sherrington just said, I think the image that you provided in terms of, I think you put it as you were trying to be honest, and it shows the building that leads down to the arches at the Mons Crescent. It does look quite obtrusive. However, the image that you provided, the mock-up from an aerial view, does show sort of a green corridor that leads to that central arch. I think you need to look at both rather than, when I looked at the one that showed the building where you said you were trying to be honest, my initial response was that looks quite obtrusive and doesn't really, but the image that you've mocked up gives a further representation, I believe, in terms of there's a green corridor from that central arch that leads across where the car park currently is. I think that is a further, well, I'm hoping is a further representation of what it is.
There's another CGI as well that's coming up, which stands further back and looks down. 100% agree with you. I will say that CGI, we were responding to a image that was sent quite late in the day, so it was really just added late as as a response to what we'd seen. You are absolutely right. That image will be so much more vibrant once the Cheadle Square development's in there. And I even said to our visualiser, do not add people, do not add trees, do not add anything that will distract, because I don't want to be accused of trying to distract the committee from what is ultimately part of our scheme, not part of. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Any questions, officers? Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask, as far as the landscape's concerned, I was told the other night that Gillespie's had done the architectural landscape, but they'd just done the drawings of it, and that they're not going to the people who are actually doing the planting and the architectural side of this. So I was just wondering, is there anything that we've got written in to the documentation that says that whatever Gillespie's have put down, that is what is going to be delivered? Now, the reason I say this is because I don't know if you remember, but we had all this situation on Manchester Road where we had Volvo, who must have been trying to send us umpteen times the drawings that you couldn't read of what they were going to do architecturally on the green parts of their plan. And can I just say that all the people who were up in arms in Kersley Avenue had a very good reason to be, because there isn't a single tree gone up, and all they can see is the glare from the big signs from Volvo. So I am concerned about this, because it's all right coming with pretty pictures from Gillespie's if it's not going to be followed through. So I would like it to be that those designs that have been put forward by Gillespie's are going to actually be the planting that goes in on this particular scheme. Thank you.
Is that not covered by condition 10, Mr. Mansell?
Well, it can be tendered, but
Councillor Sherrington, hopefully I can reassure you that the Chair is right. Condition 10, I'm inventing elected members. Condition 10 requires a fully detailed landscaping scheme, but it does say that the scheme that be submitted should be consistent with, and then lists all the documents that have already been submitted thus far. So the expectation is that the scheme will build upon the indicative drawings that Gillespie's have done. Can I guarantee that it'll be Gillespie's carrying that forward? That's not for me to decide, or if I'm honest, for the condition, it could be, but the condition requires consistency with the drawings that have been submitted thus far, and that's our expectation. Okay.
Right, thank you. The matter is now open for debate. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. If we really wanted to enhance the attractiveness of Bolton Town Centre, then this site would be a fully landscaped park. Planners keep insisting that Queen's Park is our town centre park. Well, it isn't. It's too far away. But I accept that that's not likely to happen. We can't afford it for one. And that housing is probably the eventual best use for this site. But what we've got before us now is another high-density, low-cost, small flats and houses scheme. It misses out, unfortunately, on some golden opportunities to enhance the area in the town centre, such as introducing real usable green spaces, closing Black Horse Street, and building an architectural legacy that will complement the town's historic core. I've said many times in this committee that we need a variety of accommodation in the town centre. We don't just need low-cost housing. We need some luxury apartments. We need to attract entrepreneurs, business leaders and employers into the town centre. We have already on sites such as the YMCA 40 small flats, at the Post Office 38, Globeworks 150, Marsden House about 87, and then there are future developments or ongoing developments at Spa Road, Chorley Street and several town centre student accommodation sites. And there are more small flats under development or on the wish list at Central Street, Trinity Quarter, Church Wharf and Bradshawgate. This application is for another 164 small flats, as well as the houses. Parking is dismissed in the town centre as being unnecessary. Well, maybe it's in London and perhaps even in Manchester, but I'm not sure that we can just dismiss it that easily in Bolton. So we have on this site just 57 parking spaces, and that's for 44 houses and 164 flats. There is effectively no parking for the flats at all. At our presentation the other night, the architect said, well, that's not a problem because there are NCP car parks nearby for people in the flats that might have a car. But what he fails to mention is that the annual parking pass at the NCP Octagon car park is around £740. And if you pay by the day, then it's going to cost you in excess of £2,000 a year. So it simply isn't an option. And people in flats that do have cars will be forced to park on whatever streets there are. And that's very limited in this part of town. The scale and the massing of the apartment blocks, particularly blocks 1 and 2, is very significant. Blocks 1 and 2 are higher than Le Mans Crescent. Blocks 3 and 4 are almost as high. And blocks 1 and 2, in my view, obliterate the view of the rear of Le Mans Crescent from Moor Lane, partly because of their orientation, but mainly because of their size and scale. Cheadle Gardens and the Linear Park are welcome additions to a town centre development, which, to be fair, we don't often get. But they are, relatively speaking, quite small. And they do appear to be flat and hard surfaced, mainly. Cheadle Gardens, in particular, is just a straight line footpath with what appears to be very little opportunity for socialising and recreation. But perhaps my main concern with this proposal is with the architecture. The massing of blocks 1, 2, 3 and 4 overshadow the surrounding areas, and the vertical dominating facades are featureless and devoid of any architectural merit, I'm afraid. I have 2 drawings here, which you won't be able to see, but you can look them up on Google. One is the elevation drawing of block 1, which you can get from the application, and the other is the blue of H-wing at Forest Bank Prison in Agecroft. And the similarities are incredible. And that just kind of emphasises my doubts about the architectural merit. I don't think it brings anything to the town centre. And so I'm going to move refusal of this application. The only thing in its favour, in my view, is the contribution to our housing deficit. But I'm going to move refusal mainly on the grounds of poor design and poor site layout, also on the grounds of the type of accommodation which I don't think we need, and because there is insufficient parking. So I'm going to move refusal, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Architecture is a subjective thing to each individual. I like it. And this is a vital piece of the jigsaw to start the regeneration of our town centre. We all know town centres are changing. And to support them, we have to have people living in them. Because it's not going to stay as it is. It's not going to stay as a retail. You want a big superstore, you go out to Middlebrook. What we've got to try and encourage here in the town centre is leisure use, the nighttime economy, etc. And to do that, we need, like I say, people to live in them. I think it's quite telling as well that the market traders and the leader of the market submitted quite a strong supported statement. They feel it's vital to the continued success of the market, which I agree with. And I don't think the architecture should mimic Le Mans Crescent. It should complement it. It should frame it. It's bad architecture to me is to try and copy something that's already there. So you should frame it. It's a mixed-use development. It's got some excellent open quality outdoor areas, outdoor spaces. I think Councillor acknowledged that we've got the linear park, etc. coming in. And as the applicant said, it exceeds all national minimum standards. And one of the biggest factors is deliverable. They're actually ready to start on the ground, and they can start in April 2022 We all want our town centre to be redeveloped. And I think it does complement and frames the Man Crescent, particularly the arches, and it provides this boulevard look. It depends, you know, it's, like you say, you move around an area, you don't stay in one place. And I think it does complement the Crescent, and it connects even further the town centre to Queen's Park, which is another advantage. So I think this is an absolute vital piece of the jigsaw to get Bolton going again. And it's exactly the appropriate mixed-use development we need. And I would urge the committee to support it, and I'll move approval.
Councillor Peel.
Thanks, Chair. I find myself more in agreement with Councillor Allen and Councillor Morgan. And it absolutely pains me to support refusal. I really do not want to support refusal. I intended, after listening to the presentation and reading all the reports, etc., to hopefully get away with a deferral, because there may well be things that we can perhaps send back to the architects, the designers, in conjunction with the council, who, quite frankly, are leading on this, where changes can be made more to the satisfaction of members. I think it's got to be said, I mean, we would have had objections here today by the Civic Trust, and I think through personal circumstances or something's happened where they've not been able to come. But I think they do need to be commended on their submissions to us. They've been at this game for a long time, and I accept from Councillor Morgan, in terms of design and architecture, etc., beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And it's often said, you know, to the Civic Trust, if you want a completely different scheme, then put a completely different scheme in. And officers have quite rightly reflected on the report, but there are elements within the Civic Trust submission that are quite interesting and should be considered. And I think the fact that we've got a new slide up there showing a more visually accurate view of the arches at Le Mans Crescent just shows that they can sometimes give a prod to the planning department, and planning department will say, actually, you do have a point there. I don't think we can look at this application in isolation without looking at the council's master plan. Hence my questions earlier on. Councillor Sherrington, for example, talked about a site further up. Councillor Sylvester was almost bemoaning the fact that we've got a job centre there in the middle that kind of spoils everything. We are where we are with that, but the council does have the ability, as part of its master planning of the whole of the town centre, to widen this site, to look at other enhancements, to look at how these things balance out more. And I do not think, and I think it's a pity for this application, and I've spoke to the people I should be speaking to over weeks about this, that we've looked at this application almost in isolation from the multi-million-pound public realm improvements that are going to be wrapping around this. Hence my other questions on that. I think it's a pity for the application that that's not been done. Councillor Sylvester talked about none of that site fronting Le Mans Crescent being developed. I don't agree with that. I think that is part of our development brief. However, other things could have been done to have a bigger enhanced Cheadle Square, for example, to create quite a large town centre part there and actually bring in the audience site for one of these blocks. It's all coulda, shoulda, woulda, and I accept that. I do accept that, but I think it's a pity that a lot of these things may well have been missed out. There are some things that I'd be prepared to personally give on, and I agree with Councillor Morgan, and you know it's an individual's perception. I'm not sure how I feel whether blocks 1 and 2 are overimposing in terms of their massing on Moor Lane. I accept an argument that if they perhaps split up a bit, it might look a bit better, but I wouldn't go to the wall on that. I don't think, personally, we've given, our planning officers and our town centre development people have given enough kudos to green infrastructure. The only explanation we got was in reference to block 3 and 4. If we had green roofs and green walls, it would have been keeping with Le Mans Crescent. but no explanation as to why that wasn't considered for blocks 1 and 2, or better green infrastructure for the houses that are in the centre of the site. I wouldn't necessarily go to the wall on that. I think it's a missed opportunity as we're moving into a more ecologically aware culture. My biggest problem is with Block 3. I do have a problem with Block 3. This is the one that's immediately adjacent to Cheadle Square. I listened to what Councillor McMulkin said. He said, when you look at it from the ground level, I think it might be the next slide, you look at it from the ground level, it does look quite imposing, but when you look at it from the air, it doesn't look too bad. But there's not many people going to be looking at it from the air. And I appreciate that gives you a more spatial appreciation. But we could be in a position at any time in the future where the other side of Cheadle Square comes up for a potential development, and you actually then get a cavernous corridor in the middle. I personally think Block 3 is way too close to the edge there, and I would support it being set back. If that alters the viability of the scheme, that's something that would have to be looked at. I wouldn't go to the wall in terms of it, the stone matching Le Mans Crescent. But I don't think people are saying, Councillor Morgan, that it's got to kind of be the same, but I think people are saying it should enhance, because our local policy TC11, actually says that new developments should not only conserve, but enhance the special nature of the conservation area and listed buildings. Block 3 and 4 are within the Town Hall conservation area. So the onus is on any developer and our planning department to make sure it not only conserves, but enhances it. So in other words, when we're talking about enhancing, we're talking about taking advantage of the application to get something better, to get something that blends in more, not necessarily looks the same. I don't think anybody's saying it should look the same. So there's two issues there. I think the building line should be set back, and consideration should be given to, this is the view we're talking about, to how that building would blend in a bit better. I think we need to be very, very careful as members. We all want to see, we are all very much aware that town centre regen is somewhat stalling in Bolton. There's some schemes that have huge question marks over. We've had the bad news recently about the funding we wanted for Crompton Place. We all need to be very, very much aware that we don't just do a knee-jerk reaction and say, well, this is better than nothing, so let's just get on with it, let's just get it done. You know, if I was a market trader, I wouldn't care what was built there as long as there are hundreds of new houses. You've got customers on your doorstep. So in exactly the same way, we need to be careful. We just don't say, this is deliverable. We can get spades in the ground. We can get cranes in the sky. It's going to kickstart all the other stalled schemes. Because that isn't the way that we should deal with it. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for us to get it right. Because if we don't get it right, none of us are going to be here next time this site comes up for development. I doubt, maybe Councillor Rimmer might be here. He looks reasonably young, but I don't think many of us are going to be here when this next comes along. Apologies to everybody else. Just can't be eyes. So it is really, really important, Chair. It is really, really important that we don't just say, yes, we've got a tried and tested partner in Bolton at Home, very, very excellent in terms of delivering in partnership with the council. We've got a master plan. We've got good design briefs. So because of all that, let's just have a look at what's been put in front of us and go for it. I think that would be a mistake. I don't want to support refusal. I want to move deferral, actually. And I would ask perhaps Councillor Morgan and Councillor Allen to consider that. Let's just take a little bit of time here. We're not stuck for the money. You know, the money's not going to be taken away from us. Let's just take a little bit more time. And let's listen to the Civic Trust. I'm not saying do everything they're asking for. Let's listen to what other members have to say here. And if there are things that we can do to make this better, to make this a scheme that we can all be really, really proud of, take the opportunity. Let's not just do a knee-jerk reaction by either outright refusing or outright approving. So I formally move deferral, Chair.
Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to second approval. I quite like the scheme. I don't think it's 100%, but I mean, many of the things that Councillor Beale mentioned, he said that he won't go to sort of task on them. But I mean, the only issue that I have, which I think is a minor issue with the scheme, is what's actually been highlighted by the local councillor, Councillor Zaman, about the traffic cutting through the actual housing. So, for example, a lot of people that go to the market from the east or the northeast end of town don't use Moor Lane because it's a very sort of a busy area, especially around the Morrison Sainsbury's and coming into Moor Lane that way. And people like myself use Great Moor Street to go towards the market and then cut across Blackhall Street all the way to the junction, then left towards Queen's Park and then left again towards the market. And it would be very tempting to actually cut through this scheme that's on the west side and to save time, and I think it would be uncomfortable for residents. So I think to have an in-out from Moor Lane, I think would be more appropriate. So that's the only issue that I have with the scheme. I think it does enhance the civic centre. I think there's some really good points, especially some of the green areas that are proposed. Councillor Peel mentioned that we may have a further development in the future on the other side of Cheadle Square. Well, that's for us to stop if it comes to us, because we can't lose any more green space in the town. So that's, you know, if that ever comes to us, you know, I strongly suggest that we look to refuse that, and we have the power to do that. But I think not only does the scheme enhance the civic centre, I think it also enhances future plans that we have for not behind the town hall, but in front of the town hall, whenever they may come about. So I think if that would, this scheme would complement the fudge scheme around there. Councillor Allen mentioned that there's lots of, you know, he wants lots of different types of housing within the town centre. Totally agree with you, Councillor Allen. I think we should, and there are many projects that we've been talking about. Some sort of taking place, taking shape, and all the projects that you mentioned, you know, I hope they take place as soon as possible to help us regenerate our town. So I'm firmly going to be supporting the application.
Thank you, Councillor Finney.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, sorry, that was a bit echoey. I personally like the development. I think it embraces our town. I also like the fact that there were very high percentages for the split of the houses, which were the over 50s, the share scheme, the privately owned, which I believe was very, very well received with residents on the consultations which have been done. My view is we need to get people back into our town centre, and I feel this scheme would benefit a lot of people, and hopefully, you know, get the town back to a centre that we're all aiming to do. So because of the presentation and the development, I will be supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. I think when I spoke to the architect, I think you more or less grasped what I was getting at. I do think that if the Moor Lane site had been put in as a separate proposal, I would have been supporting it today. The thing that I can't support is the way that it's been dealt with around the Cheadle Square area. And a lot of it goes back to all sorts of things, you know, what what Lord Leverhulme had envisaged at that particular area, through to where we've been recently with our ideas about taking things through to Queen's Park. And I do think that to have this sort of coming out of the arches and having this lopsided situation of buildings on one side and greenery on the other, I don't think makes the place look at all. It makes it, I don't know, my daughter lives in Milton Keynes and it gives it that new town look. And it doesn't do anything for me down there because quite simply we don't have buildings like the town hall and so on. And I do think that we need to enhance what we have. And I think if we had symmetry coming out through the arches at Cheadle Square, we could actually have greenery on both sides. We could actually take this building and we could still have it and stick it on the other side. And all this about the job centre, can I just say that the job centre was built in stone like it was asked to do, right? It was built to plan, that was planning permission by this council, and it was built by plan, on time and on money. And I do think that continually knocking a building that actually does everything that we've asked it to do, I don't like it at all. And I do think that there is nothing wrong with that building. How it can become better because you stick Billy Bootcase in front of it, I don't know, because that's what this looks like. But I do think that if it was put over the other side, might have an opportunity to have a bit of shape on it, to help with the road that we're talking about going through, the path I should say, going through towards Queen's Park, and that the Civic Trust have asked for. Now I know that the Civic Trust have not asked for what I'm talking about with buildings, but I do think it would sit better over there. It would sit better regarding the people who would be wanting to buy these properties as well. And I do think that it's just in the wrong place. Everything else, I don't have a problem with the one that's on Ashburnham Street near the Odeon, the old Odeon site. I don't have a problem with that building. I think that's a really good idea in comparison to what we have at the moment over there. So I do think it's just that one building that needs reciting. And that being the case, because I'm quite happy with everything else, I will second council appeals to be deferred. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes.
Yes, thanks, Chair. This is a very important part of the town. And when I read the report, my inclination was to support it because we do definitely need people living in the town centre. We need to change it from the Wild West attitude we've got in some parts of it to a place where people live and shop and make it feel busy. But it is a very important area. There's a lot right with this application, but I'm persuaded that we should actually go along with what Councillor Peel says and defer it, because I think it can be improved. It's not a bad application, but there are things, particularly related to the Town Hall and the Mont Crescent, that can be improved. So I'll certainly be supporting deferral.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come in at this point because it's been an interesting debate, no question of that. Well, Councillor McMulkin, I'll allow you to come first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of points that I wanted to pick up on. Councillor Allen mentioned, he was very concerned around the parking issue and the lack of parking for the... To be perfectly frank, I think that is a very bold move. If we are serious about climate, that is a very bold move. And I was really pleased when I saw that. I thought that is something, and it would play into our pressure and argument around a better transport service around Greater Manchester, etc., etc. The sustainability of this development is, I was really pleased with. I've got to say what Councillor mentioned in regards to solar panels that would have been sort of the icing on the cake if that had been in place as well. But that in terms of that, I'm really pleased with that. Councillor Morgan's correct. Architecture, you know, I've no doubt many people, when the Octagon Theatre was built, thought that was very much out of character right alongside Le Mans Crescent. However, I believe the new development that it's been reached does complement it much more and looks a better building. So I think over time, people's opinions, etc. Councillor Peel picked me up on, yeah, it was an aerial view, but I still believe if we'd have had that view with the trees, with etc., that would have put a different light on the presence of that building there. It does look, there against the car park, does look very oppressive, I've got to say. It did to me. I've got to say, I've listened to all the arguments, and I've got to feel I wouldn't have wanted to refuse. I certainly wasn't in that camp, but I will, I believe, be supporting deferral on that basis of the points that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I tend to view that this is an opportunity which is a great change from what we have currently. But I also reflect on two things. Councillor Sherrington referred to Lord Leverhulme. And if you look at the Mawson plans from Lord Leverhulme, what actually he envisaged was a boulevard from Moor Lane through to the back of the what is now the Arches. Effectively, what is proposed within this development. If anyone wants to see the Mawson plan, I'm happy to share it with you, because that was the Leverhulme vision. A tree-lined boulevard that actually then went through, ultimately Crompton Place as now is, to the parish church. But it was not a vast open expanse of green land and tree planting. It was a tree-lined boulevard, a walk-through. And what I see of this drawing, and these plans, exactly replicates the Mawson plan. The second thing is that Councillor Peel talked about a future planning committee. Well, I happen to have been a member of the planning committee when we changed the character of Cheadle Square and lost what I think were two fascinating buildings. We lost the former ambulance station, which actually blocked directly onto Cheadle Square. And just along from there, we lost the mill, which again was a fascinating brick building with some wonderful fenestration and the sort of characteristics of recessed windows and fenestration detail as envisaged by the current proposal. So actually, much of what is proposed here has a very sound historical base. Councillor Dean is correct in my view, in that if a future application came in to build on the north of Cheadle Square and to lose that green expanse, then that's something the future planning committee, which some of us may or may not be on, would have the opportunity to determine. And that would be a future application. But in terms of what we have before us, this is an opportunity, in my view, to box off Moor Lane with, I think, those two fairly substantial blocks, and I can see the logic of that, to recognise that whilst the Civic Trust put in a powerful argument for the narrowing and the closing of Black Horse Street, that actually would be disastrous for traffic flows around the town centre, because it's the principal bus route through to the north and south of the town. Otherwise, we wouldn't have made a bus lane there on a previous occasion. So to narrow Black Horse Street would be pretty foolish, in my view. You would actually exacerbate traffic congestion around the market on Moor Lane and through to Great Moor Street. So in my view, what we have before us, beauty to the eye of the beholder. I accept that entirely. But I think what we have before us is quite an interesting development. It's an opportunity, I think, to bring people back into Bolton. There were people who bemoaned the fact at one stage when it could have been a student village, that wasn't what we wanted. We want to bring more stable population in the town centre. This is an opportunity to do so. And for that reason, I would be supporting an approval of this application. On that basis, I see no other indication of intent to speak. We come to a vote. It was moved, first of all, an approval. Councillor Allen's refusal was not seconded. Councillor Morgan moved an approval, that was seconded. Councillor Peel then moved deferment, and that was seconded. I therefore take the deferment as the amendment. So we vote now on a deferment. Members are voting for a deferment or against deferment.
Councillor Allen? For. Councillor Ayub? For. Councillor Brady? Against. Councillor Connor? Against. Councillor Dean? Against. Councillor Finney? Against. Councillor Howarth? For. Councillor Hayes? For. Councillor McMulkin? For. Councillor Mistry? For. Councillor Morgan? Against. Councillor Peel? For. Councillor Rimmer? Against. Councillor Sanders? Against. Councillor Sherrington? For. Councillor Walsh?
Against.
Councillor D. Wilkinson? For. Councillor T. Wilkinson?
I will therefore vote in favour of the application. So, vote for the application. Against deferment. Deferral. Against deferral. Against deferral. We take a vote now for or against approval.
Deferral's lost.
Deferral's lost, so it's now moved approval.
Yeah.
If you vote for approval or you vote against approval, which means refusal. So it's for or against approval.
Councillor Allen? Councillor Ayub? Councillor Brady? For. Councillor Connor? Councillor Dean? For. Councillor Finney? For. Councillor Howarth? Abstain. Councillor Hayes? For. Councillor McMulkin? For. Councillor Mistry? Yes. Councillor Morgan? For. Councillor Peel? Abstain. Councillor Rimmer? For. Councillor Sanders? For. Councillor Sherrington? Against. Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor D. Wilkinson? Councillor T. Wilkinson?
That is now approved. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We move then to the next item on the agenda. You can rename it if you like after me, Councillor Sherrington, I won't mind. There are better things I could think. We move on. Application next is for the Heaton and Lostock Neighbourhood Children's Centre, New Hall Lane. This is the air source heat pump. Anything to add to the report?
Just one minor thing. Actually, a minor thing. The recommendation, as outlined in the report, is incorrect because the amended consultation with residents ends at the end of today. So the recommendation will change to delegate to director in place, depending on no substantive concerns being raised.
Right. Members voting for or against that application? Ready to take the vote? Sorry. Councillor Allen wants to speak as ward councillor. Sorry, Councillor Allen, then Councillor
It was just it was to the officers, really.
Right, I'll allow you.
Okay, thank you. All it is, Chair, I just wanted to ask that as far as these pumps are concerned, we were supposed to be having a meeting so that we can find out exactly what they do. So I was just wondering if somebody can give us an idea of when we might be having this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor. Yep. I know Matthew Kay has, I think, had some information from Robertson's on I suppose the specification of what they actually do. So, I don't know if Matthew wants to add some detail.
Yeah, I was asked by Councillor Brady to put together a briefing. So Robertson's have sent that. So I shall just look that up now, and I can set that out for you if you want. I can read that out for you. But that was prepared by the consultants who are working on this. And essentially, in October last year, the government announced £1 billion of funding to support the decarbonisation of public sector buildings with a focus on heat. Each building securing a grant, therefore, must include an element of heat decarbonisation. So fundamentally, this can be done by either solar, thermal or heat pumps. So Bolton, yeah.
This is not about what the most
Right. Oh, right. So that's fine. You're fine with that.
Somebody to show us what, you know, what it looks like, what it does, how it works, what does it mean, you know, because we're the ones who get people out there saying to us, what is this with this heat thing and what have you, and how will it affect me? And we're the ones who have to answer those sort of questions. So I would like it if we could probably have a get-together, a pre-planning meeting or something, where they come along with it and we can ask those kind of questions and look at some diagrams of how it works and so on. Okay? Thank you.
I would have to declare an interest at that point, Councillor Hayes, and clearly I'm not going to do so. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to move approval of this, but Councillor Sherrington raises a very good point, and I raised at the last planning committee the question of how much of the total energy requirement in these buildings is actually met by these air source heat pumps. And disappointingly, that's still not mentioned in the report. Now, I appreciate that we can't guarantee what contribution an air source heat pump makes, because it does depend on ambient temperatures and all sorts of things. But I would like some indication of what sort of percentage of the total energy demand will be met, because if it's not something approaching 100%, then really we're just playing at it. We're just putting these things in because the government have given us money. We'd be better investing that money in fewer buildings, but making them 100% carbon zero, or much closer to that. So I'd like some idea of what contribution these heat source pumps make, and what our strategy is for getting to net zero. But other than that, I'll approve this. It would be churlish not to.
Mr. Kay will circulate the briefing note on it, and Councillor Hayes is quite correct. It's a matter not for this committee. We're here to consider planning applications. It is a matter for a scrutiny committee in another place. And I think it's something that members could raise properly in that forum. But in the interim, the note which is available will be circulated to members. It's been moved that this is approved. Is that seconded? Councillor Morgan. We will therefore take a vote.
Councillor Allen, Councillor Ayub, Councillor Brady, Councillor Connor, Councillor Dean, Councillor Finney, Councillor Howarth, Councillor Hayes, Councillor McMulkin, Councillor Mistry, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Peel, Councillor Rimmer, Councillor Sanders, Councillor Sherrington, Councillor Walsh, Councillor D. Wilkinson, Councillor T. Wilkinson.
That application is approved. The next application relates to the Harvey Early Years Centre in Shore Street. This does not relate in any way, shape or form, nor is there any discussion necessary on the future of the nursery at that site. This is for the wider building and entirely for that purpose. Unless there are any technical questions, someone prepared to move? There was, as I understand it, not a matter before Planning Committee, but it was never intended to demolish the building. It was merely the future of the day nursery. That is an entirely separate matter and is going through due process, Councillor Sherrington, as you well know, and I wouldn't wish to be at odds with you on any matter, not least that. So this is, it's been proposed. Is that seconded? We therefore take the vote.
Councillor Allen, Councillor Ayub, Councillor Brady, Councillor Connor, Councillor Dean, Councillor Finney, Councillor Howarth, Councillor Hayes, Councillor McMulkin, Councillor Mistry, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Peel, Councillor Rimmer, Councillor Sanders, Councillor Sherrington, Councillor Walsh, Councillor D. Wilkinson, Councillor T. Wilkinson.
This application is approved. We come then to the final application for 80 Somerton Road, Bolton. Councillor Dean has declared an interest and is withdrawing. Thank you very much. Mr. Allen, are you dealing with this one?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, the application is brought to committee as the applicant is Councillor Dean. Proposed extensions planned a first floor extension at front, side and rear, new openings and conversion of the existing garage. The proposed extensions would be subordinate to the original dwelling and in character of the surrounding area. The proposed extensions would also respect the living conditions of adjoining residents and comply with guidance contained with the Council's House Extension SPD. The proposal would result in a property increase from 3 to 5 bedrooms with 2 car parking spaces retained within the curtilage. Additional car parking isn't available. As there are no parking restrictions in the area and the property is within close walking distance to several major bus routes, it is considered that the proposal complies with core strategy policy P5, accessibility. Therefore, the proposal complies with policy and is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Members' wishes on this one? Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Seconded. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Members, move to the vote, please.
Councillor Allen, Councillor Ayoub, Councillor Brady, Councillor Connor, Councillor Finney, Councillor Howarth, Councillor Hayes, Councillor McMulkin, Councillor Mistry, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Peel, Councillor Rimmer, Councillor Sanders, Councillor Sherrington, Councillor Walsh, Councillor D. Wilkinson, Councillor T. Wilkinson.
Thank you very much. That application is approved. That being the whole of business. Sorry. I don't seem to have a list. Sorry. Councillor Hayes, please. Sorry.
Yes, Chair. Can I say how delighted I am to see that the decision of this committee was backed up by the government inspector. This is this hideous patio and sun lounge at the back, if you remember, in Markland Hill Lane.
Indeed.
And we're always reminded when the committee overturns an officer recommendation and the inspector then overturns what the committee had said and supports the officers. I think it's as well just to remind on this occasion, sorry, Helen, that we had a recommendation for approval of this. And I think the committee approved it unanimously. So, good for the inspector.
Thank you very much indeed. That is the whole of business. Can I thank you for your attendance and declare the meeting closed?